Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're stepping back in time, heading to the court of Henry VIII, a place where, well, let's just say choosing your words carefully was a matter of life or death.
You could say that again. A bit like Game of Thrones, but with more elegant poetry.
Love that analogy. So we're going to be focusing on two poets, right? Thomas Wyatt and Henry Howard.
The Earl of Surrey.
Of course, Henry Howard, the Earl of Surrey. And we're looking at how they navigated this courtly world of danger with their words.
Their words, indeed.
And we've got an awesome essay here that analyzes 4 specific poems, 2 by each poet. It really delves into this idea of fear, especially after, 1536, when things got, well...
1536, a turning point.
Yeah.
You had Anne Boleyn, her execution, the men accused of being her lovers, all executed. It sent a very clear message.
Telling.
No one was safe, even those close to the king.
No one.
No one.
And both Wyatt and Surrey knew this. They'd had their own encounters with Henry, their own brushes with his...
with his wrath.
Wrath. Let's dive into their poetry then. Let's start with Wyatt's, who list his wealth and ease retain. Now, our essay suggests that this was written while he was imprisoned.
Potentially fearing for his life.
Exactly. And you can really sense that fear, right? In the poem's structure, five-line stanzas, and each with a repeating rhyme in the middle.
Like bars closing in around you.
Yes. Trapped, suffocating. And then there's that Latin phrase he uses, circa regna tonat.
It thunders around the kingdom.
Okay, so more than just a thunderstorm, though, right?
More than just a storm. It's a direct reference to Seneca's Phaedra, where that same phrase describes Jupiter's rage, a not-so-subtle nod to the atmosphere in Henry's court.
Oh, I see. So like you said, no one was safe. And the message here is...
stay quiet, stay hidden, or face the consequences.
A survival guide in verse. Clever.
Wyatt knew how to play the game, even while expressing his anxieties.
Okay, let's move on to Surrey's poem. So, cruel prison, how could betide, alas. He wrote this while imprisoned in Windsor Castle. I mean, the castle, that doesn't sound too bad, does it?
Well, Surrey paints a different picture. Right from the first line, that contrast, so cruel prison.
Right.
But then, proud Windsor, that tension between confinement and the power of the monarchy.
Yeah. And he goes on to describe the castle in such detail. The green courts, the tower with ladies in their finery.
It's like he's reminding himself, and us, of what he's missing.
Of what he's lost. And those memories he describes. Playing games, hunting.
Sharing stories with Henry Fitzroy, the king's son.
Wow.
Our essay mentions it has this epic quality, referencing King Priam of Troy.
Right, like a lost golden age. And then that sharp turn from those joyous memories to...
raw despair.
Yes. Suddenly we see his blood-forsaken face, his uncontrollable tears.
The weight of his isolation.
Oh, yeah. But then, a moment of solace. He says his imprisonment is a lesser grief than the loss of a friend.
Now that is interesting. Who was this friend? How was their loss worse than imprisonment in Windsor Castle? It reminds us that Henry's court wasn't just about physical danger.
Right.
It was about a web of relationships, Betrayal could be just as deadly.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's fascinating that both Wyatt and Surrey, facing this fear, this very real fear, they turn to Stoicism.
In a way.
Especially in their paraphrases of the Psalms.
It may seem like a paradox, expressing fear, but also striving for inner peace.
Exactly.
Stoicism isn't about ignoring your feelings. It's about finding the strength to endure.
Right.
Imagine having to maintain your composure, knowing one wrong word and...
off with your head.
Precisely.
So they turn to the Psalms.
To express their struggles.
Without directly challenging the king.
Clever.
Very clever.
They could speak truth to power, but in this coded language.
A dangerous code to crack. Let's look closer at Wyatt's. A paraphrase of the penitential Psalms. Psalm 143. This one, he wrote it after his second imprisonment.
And things were even more precarious for him then.
Yeah, I mean, just the year before, he lost a powerful protector, Thomas Cromwell, executed in 1540.
Cromwell's execution sent shockwaves through Wyatt's world.
Definitely. And you can feel that unease in the poem. Even though it's framed as King David speaking, there's this rawness, this vulnerability. He describes himself as dried up soil, yearning for relief.
That image of dried up soil, powerful. You can almost feel Wyatt's despair.
Yeah. He may be using King David's voice, but that urgency, that's all Wyatt, especially with that repetition.
Rid me, O Lord. And the rhyme scheme he uses. Terza rima. Each stanza linked to the next. Like a chain, this relentless plea for deliverance.
Now, Surrey's a paraphrase of some of the Psalms of David, Psalm
Sure.
55. This one, well, the essay points out he wrote this knowing his execution was likely.
Imminent.
Imminent. You can feel that sense of doom. And his choice here, unrhymed, 12-syllable lines.
It creates the sense of heaviness, impending doom.
Yeah, like a funeral march.
Yeah.
And the imagery is so vivid. He talks about being hunted and entrapped, longing to escape to a faraway forest,
He's reached his breaking point,
exhausted by the constant fear, the intrigue.
yearning for a simpler existence, away from the court. But this poem isn't just about fear.
What else?
It's fueled by rage, and he directs it at, well, a friendly foe, someone who betrayed him.
Ouch. That's got to hurt more than anything, being betrayed by someone you thought was on your side.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaks to the paranoia of the time. In Henry's court, you never knew who to trust. Your closest friend one day could turn on you the next.
And yet, even in this anger, Surrey turns to faith. He believes in God's justice. He finds solace in that.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moments, faith can be a source of comfort and strength.
It really is. So we've seen how Wyatt and Surrey, they capture this emotional roller coaster of living under Henry VIII. But, I'm curious about the bigger picture here. Can you give us some context? Like, how did the political and religious landscape of England shift during Henry's reign?
Well, Henry VIII wasn't just a king who liked to get married. He fundamentally changed the religious order in England when he broke from the Catholic Church and established himself as the supreme head of the Church of England. It sent shockwaves through society.
It's not just royal drama, is it? It's a fundamental shift in power.
Okay.
And people's beliefs suddenly had very real consequences.
Precisely. Expressing your religious views could be incredibly dangerous. Both Wyatt and Surrey, they were courtiers, diplomats. They had to tread carefully in this new world. One misstep and
It's off with your head again.
Exactly.
So how did these poets, they were known for their eloquence, for their wit. How did they adapt to this climate of fear? Did they, self-censor?
In a way, yes. They couldn't be openly critical, so they had to be subtle. We've already talked about the Psalms, and that was one way. They could express their own struggles using King David's words. Plausible deniability.
But even in those paraphrases, you can sense the anxiety, right? Like in Wyatt's Psalm 143, when he talks about being dried up soil, that feels like a metaphor for the spiritual dryness of, living under a tyrant.
I agree. They couldn't attack Henry directly, so they used metaphors, allegories to convey their feelings. It's a form of resistance, but it required skill, cunning.
Like walking a tightrope. Self-expression versus self-preservation.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just the words, it was also the form, right?
Mhm.
The way they used language to create specific effects.
Exactly. Think back to Wyatt's who list his wealth and ease retain. That claustrophobic structure, it mirrors his own feeling of being trapped.
Like he's using the structure of the poem itself to convey that suffocation.
Exactly. And then you have Surrey in So Cruel Prison. He uses these sweeping descriptions of Windsor Castle, almost as if he's trying to break free from his confinement through language.
It's a beautiful contrast. Wyatt uses form to create constriction, and Surrey uses it to create this sense of longing, of reaching beyond his limits.
And then there's Surrey's use of epic imagery. He references King Priam of Troy, elevates his suffering, to a grander scale.
It's like he's saying, even in this place of privilege and power, I'm still a prisoner.
A subtle critique of the monarchy.
And then there's Stoicism, which, it seems almost paradoxical for poets expressing these really strong emotions.
It's a common misconception that Stoicism is about suppressing your emotions. It's about finding inner peace, resilience in the face of adversity.
So not about denying your fear or anger, but about finding the strength to endure.
Exactly. And for Wyatt and Surrey, living under Henry VIII's, volatile temper, cultivating that inner strength was crucial to survival.
Right. It wasn't just about gritting your teeth and bearing it. Stoicism also emphasizes virtue, reason, living in accordance with nature. And we see that reflected in their work, too.
Absolutely. It provided them with a framework for understanding the injustices of their time, gave them a language to process their experiences, even when those experiences were frightening, unpredictable.
They found a way to express moral outrage without directly challenging the king. It's a delicate balance, isn't it? Self-expression and self-preservation.
And it's a testament to their genius that they could create such powerful work in such a constrained and dangerous environment. Their ability to find beauty and meaning amidst turmoil. Remarkable.
Their poetry speaks to a kind of resilience That transcends time and place. Makes you wonder, though, did their fear, while a source of anxiety, did it also fuel their creativity?
That's a fascinating question. Perhaps the act of writing itself, of shaping language to express their experiences, was a way of confronting and maybe even overcoming that fear.
Maybe those limitations, those constraints, they forced them to find new ways to communicate their truth.
Like pressure creating a diamond. Their poetry wouldn't be the same without that tension, that awareness of the stakes.
And it reminds us that the most powerful art often comes from the darkest times, you know, when we're faced with challenges, with fear, with uncertainty. That's when we're pushed to dig deeper, to find new ways to express ourselves, to connect with others. It's amazing, isn't it, how these poems, they were written centuries ago, but they still resonate with us today. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've definitely felt that knot of fear when things are uncertain, or that sense of betrayal when someone you trust lets you down.
Wyatt and Surrey capture those raw human emotions so honestly. And what's striking is, they don't shy away from the darkness.
Yeah.
But they also find these glimmers of hope, resilience, even in the middle of all the turmoil.
It's a good reminder that even when everything seems dark, the human spirit, it can still find a way to shine through.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about how their poetry reflects the power dynamics of their time. I mean, they couldn't exactly, tweet their frustrations about Henry VIII.
Right.
So they had to find these clever ways to express their dissent.
They were masters of the subtweet, centuries before Twitter.
I love that.
By turning to the songs, they could use these existing narratives of suffering and injustice, to give voice to their own anxieties without directly challenging the king.
And it wasn't just what they said; it was how they said it.
Right.
So we talked about those formal innovations, like Wyatt's use of rhyme and who list his wealth and he's retain. That really tight rhyme scheme creates this feeling of being boxed in, confined.
It's like he's using the structure itself to convey that claustrophobia, that sense of being trapped by forces you can't control. And then you have Surrey in So Cruel Prison. He uses these sweeping descriptions of Windsor Castle, almost as if he's trying to escape through language.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, look, even surrounded by all this grandeur, all this power, I still feel imprisoned. It's subtle, but it's really effective.
It is.
A critique of the monarchy. And through it all, they find solace in Stoicism, which isn't just about enduring hardship, is it? It's about finding meaning.
Purpose.
In the face of it, it's like all those self-help books we see everywhere today, but written with a little more style. But those themes, fear, betrayal, the longing for peace, for freedom, they're timeless, aren't they?
They are.
Just as relevant today as they were back then.
Absolutely. And that's why their poetry still speaks to us centuries later.
Because they tap into those universal human experiences. So we've explored how these two poets navigated Henry VIII's court, using their words to express their fear, anxieties, even their defiance. But here's the thought, something to ponder. How might their work have been different, if they hadn't faced such constant danger? Would they have been the same poets without that looming threat of the executioner?
It's an interesting question. Perhaps their fear, it was a source of pressure, but it may have also fueled their creativity in a way that wouldn't have been possible in a more peaceful time.
Maybe. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful art, it comes from adversity. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of fear and poetry in the court of Henry VIII. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep seeking out those hidden depths of history in the human heart.